So now let's do a couple of these problems we did in class. Let's start with this one, problem number 2 on week 12. We have two policies, a quota and a tax, and we have to evaluate what are the differences in these two policies in terms of consumer, producer, and total surplus. Let's start by finding the equilibrium. So for that, we just simply make supply equal to demand, so that will be 50 minus P equals P, and the value of P in that case ended up being 25. We plug that into either of the two curves. We found that Q is equal to 25. Now we have a tax of $4, and we split that tax in the demand curve, and we know that what we do is we shift the demand by 4, and since the value of the slopes on each case of Q and P is 1, we can just simply write the new demand curve as Q D equals 46 minus P, and now we can solve for Q by making demand equal to supply, and then P will end up being 23, and again Q also equals 23. So that will be with the tax. So let's start putting this on a diagram here, so we can compare both things in the diagram. It's easier. So we have the supply curve upward sloping, the demand curve downward sloping. We know that at the equilibrium point of the two of them, this is going to be 25, and this here is going to also be 25. Now a tax basically reduces this to 23. So we can find that the deadweight loss already on this case, right? It will be this triangle here. But now let's do the quota, see how things will be different. So a quota basically is going to say, well, the quantity has to be 23, and the easiest way to do that is to put that 23 into the demand equation to solve for the price, because we know the quantity is already 23, and we know that the price is going to end up being 27. So what we end up here is with this is 27, and we know that this here had been the tax, right? So we know that this is 23 here, because that was the quantity with the tax. And now we have all the necessary things to evaluate the differences between the two. Let's label each of these areas so we can talk about them. Okay, so pay attention now, because I'm going to write this down because I ran out of space, and it's also easier if you keep track of this yourself, right? So first let's value the equilibrium. So at the equilibrium point of 25 and 25, consumer surplus is A plus B plus E, and producer surplus is C plus D plus F. So total surplus is A plus B plus C plus D plus E and plus F. Right, so make sure you make notes of that. If you don't understand that, rewind or stop to make sure that that's the case. You understand that the total producer surplus is A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F, when the price is 25 and the quantity is 25. Now with the tax, with both the tax and the quota, the quantity goes to 23, so that surplus in those two units is not surplus anymore, it's a deadweight loss, and that's equal to triangle EF. E was part of consumer surplus, and now it's a deadweight loss, and F was part of producer surplus, and now it's a deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss is E plus F. Now with the tax, the government is actually collecting some revenue on this, right? Because they're collecting a tax of 4 times the amount, 23, so that will be the area BC. So BC with the tax is revenue by the government. And if we assume the government uses that money wisely to the betterment of all society, then that tax can also be welfare or surplus. So total welfare or total surplus is A, B, C, and D with the tax. A is consumer surplus, B and C is government revenue, and D is producer surplus. Now what about the quota? Well, with the quota, again, the deadweight loss is the same because we have quantity at 23. But the distribution of consumer, the surplus between consumer and producers is different. With the quota, there's no revenue, so B and C is not government revenue anymore. And who gets that? Well, clearly the producers get that, because with the quota, the price is 27, and A is the only consumer surplus. So B, C, and D is producer surplus with the quota, which is the area between the price, 27, and the supply curve, which is all this area right here. That is the producer surplus with the quota. So in terms of total surplus and deadweight loss, both policies are the same, but in terms of the distribution of the surplus, the quota is a little biased in favor of producers and allow producers to collect the surplus of B and C, which before with a tax was used to be government revenue.